Throughout my life, I've had the benefit of knowing many close relationships through my travels throughout the world, but none closer than the relationship that we're going to explore today. Today we have Norm and Niki Rebin with us, and we're going to just talk to them about what makes them a special couple, a father and a daughter. Norm.
I like that, special
Niki.
couple.
Thanks,
Thank
Gord.
you.
Sure.
Thank you.
What constitutes the perfect relationship that you two have?
Well, I think Gord is one that evolves constantly. I find that when you're a little girl, your dad is the perfect guy, you know.
Right.
He's up on the pedestal, he's the man you always want in your life, you know, he's your special guy.
You mean that's gone?
Yeah, well, you know, it happens, it happens. But as you get to be a teenager, these things change, and you start to see little things, little idiosyncrasies and so on, things that worry you a little bit, and then you have to be mature enough as the child to grow with it. You have to evolve and say, hey, he's not always going to be the perfect guy, but he's still my special man.
Right.
And then you respect him more. So I think you have to grow into friends then.
That's true in reverse, too. The truth of the matter is that your little girl, when she's your little girl, and there's a guy out there, every father in the world has his little girl as long as he has a daughter, but she'll always stay his little girl, whether she turns to be 30, 40, 50, or 105, as long as he's alive. And that's a very, very special relationship. She's very adoring when she's young. And then she develops her own mind and her own psyche and her own values. And you've got to accept the fact that some of that adoration disappears, but a respect replaces it. Because now you're dealing with an individual who has her own mind, her own values, etc. You've got to be prepared for that transition. She's no longer that little woman that will do everything for her dad. She's now a pretty individualistic, headstrong, determined person who has her values but can respect yours.
Have you ever run into any, and you're both very learned people, have you ever run into any topics where you haven't been able to come to a consensus? Because you two are talking all the time, whether by phone or in person. Have you ever come into a topic where there couldn't be a consensus, where you couldn't see each other's point of view?
Issue, Gord.
Ah, yes, yeah.
Yeah, and look, that's a very legitimate. I have a fellow who has pursued Niki relentlessly for 6 years.
Just one.
Who's ultimate, well, actually, she's had 3 proposals of marriage, and thank God she's turned all 3 down. But the truth of the matter is that I've had a fellow that has become a very close friend of mine, who has a very rigid point of view about a man towards a woman. And I understand that point of view, but at the same time, I have a totally different point of view about what I'd like to see my daughter evolve into. And so there's a bit of lack of consensus there, not so much between her and myself, but between the man who loves her and his view about the perfect little woman of the future and my view about this woman.
Right.
I think, Gord, that's an interesting point Dad was making, in that when a new man enters a young woman's life, he has to realize that he is not replacing the father relationship. And so do I have to realize that Dad will always be my special pal, and now we're special friends as adults, but this is a different relationship for me now.
Right.
One of the things I think we have to understand is that any of us who have sons and daughters, they're not mind readers. If you're tactile, if you demonstrate through your affection, through your hug, through your touch, through your feeling, that you really love them, then they know it's a fact. They don't have to guess at it. And I'm saying fly in the face of some of these conventions. If in fact people don't like it, that's their problem, not yours. You know what your relationship is. And I'd much rather hear the jeers of 10,000 people and have the support of my daughter than vice versa.
Well, actually, Gord, you'll even find people who appreciate the fact that we're so close. For example, Dad and I are the first ever father-daughter team who team teaches at university. And it's really exciting for the two of us to have a course together. And people really grab onto it. They really appreciate it. In fact, a lot of places you go, people walk up and ask you, how did you stay so close with your dad all these years?
She outscores me, incidentally. No, it's really incredible. And again, a lot of my male friends have said, well, isn't it an antsy thing when your daughter or son outscores you? And I say, no, it's not. Because I'll tell you, there is such infinite pride in seeing your own flesh and blood doing well, that you more bask in their glory than you do in your own. When Niki gets a standing ovation from an audience when she conducts a seminar,
how do you feel?
On cloud 9, and I don't get that same feeling when I get a standing ovation. Maybe it's because I don't get too many, but I've had my share of them. But the thing is that there's really greater pride in your offspring succeeding than there is in your own success.
The other thing you really need to know in any relationship, especially for Dad and me, is you have to share things. Share your expectations, share your goals. What are you expecting from the other person? I found as I was growing up that a lot of parents will say, well, my son doesn't want to do this, and I really want him to be a doctor. Well, maybe your son doesn't want to be a doctor, but have you ever asked him or her directly? And we often think that we've asked, but have you ever come right out and said, son, this is what I'd like you to do. How do you feel about it? And then if they disagree, you have to agree to disagree.
And check out whether or not their views are changing.
Exactly.
Because we change from day to day and from month to month. And so the father says to son, well, you were going to be an architect, now you talk about engineering. What happened to you? We all evolve. We all change. But if we're not in constant touch, we don't know those are changes. And then when they happen, they're a crisis. But Gord, can I say something else too? You've got to have this sharing internally. My closeness with my daughter is shared by my daughter's relationship with her mother. And the truth of the matter is, my wife, Delva, does not resent my closeness with Nikki. She basks in it. Right. In too many marriages and too many families, there's a resentment of the closeness of two members of that family with each other. That shouldn't be the case.
You love Nikki.
I sure do.
You love your dad.
I sure do.
And you show it to each other all the time.
He's my best pal.
Right.
Thank you.
And to say to each other that you love each other, whether it be you two or other people, to say it without showing it, wouldn't you say is just about obscene?
Just about obscene.
That's right.
And counterproductive. And a lot of people find difficulty saying it, Gord, but if you can't say it face to face, then write a letter. And if you can't write a letter, tape a tape. And if you can't tape a tape, put a video of yourself on saying, I love you. And if you can't do that, do something symbolic that shows you love them. But do something tangible to illustrate
Well,
it.
the other thing is, Gord, there are 100 different ways to say, I love you. You don't have to say, I love you, if those words are hard. There's, I'm thinking about you. I thought of you today when I was doing such and such. There are a million different things you can say.
Nikki, as your dad said, as Norm has said, that you've had probably 3 marriage proposals over your lifetime.
3 that I know of.
You've never married. Why not? You're a very attractive, vivacious, young, talented woman. Why haven't you married?
Well, that's a good question, Gord. I've had a lot of people ask me whether my relationship with Dad has somehow impacted on my non-marriage to date.
That's what I was getting at.
Well, I figured that's what you're getting at. I would say it's very interesting because people have always thought that I should marry an equally dynamic, exciting, and charismatic man as my father. But the point is, I think that those of us who are out there charging around the world and doing these kind of things need somebody who is supportive and caring and loving back at home. And so I have been kind of in search of a man like that. And in fact, I am with someone like that now. And I'm very happy.
This implies you might be saying yes eventually for this constant presence?
That's not the question, is it? Did anybody prompt you for this? But what I actually believe, Gord, is that a lot of people get married because they're lonely. I think we need companionship. We need somebody at home when we walk in the door at night.
Definitely.
And I have always lived with my family. Even I've gone away around the world, but I've always come back home. And because we've stayed close, I've always had that. So there isn't that void to rush out there and get married right away. And I think people should think about that.
You know, marriage is not the end-all of all human relationships. And if you look historically, you'll find that marriage has gone through a lot of evolutions, and there are a lot of people that suggest that in the future, we may not have marriage as an institution at all, or we will simply have renewable contracts. And there is some suggestion that kids will become, in fact, the responsibility of a clan or a community as opposed to a parental responsibility. So we've got to accept the fact that values are really changing. And the attitude that you must marry, or you must have children, or you must do certain things, or you must live in such a place in a global society is nonsense, as you probably know yourself.
Exactly.
Statistics are mind-blowing right now, Gord. They've just done a study in the Ottawa-Carleton area in Canada, Ontario, Canada, showing that 70% more people are now living together than choosing to get married. And I think that's because we're all out there searching right now. What is the perfect relationship for us, you know? What can fulfill you in many ways? And with the high divorce rate that we all know about, people are out there looking for another answer.
But isn't that also the great excitement of the age? With all human history, there has never been such a time of flux. That's right. The opportunity, we're all poised at the edge of this cliff, and we can either soar off into space and really illuminate our lives, or else drop to the rocks below. And I don't think there's ever been such a pivotal time in history where we can share so much information, so much knowledge, have so many options, defy so many old conventions, create new legends and conventions. I think it's the most exciting time in the... People who can't enjoy living today are sad stories.
Ladies and gentlemen, should every father have a relationship with their daughter like we've seen today?
What is your concept of the ideal parent-child relationship? What specific steps are you taking to achieve it? What sacrifices are you willing to make for this relationship?